We figured you knew a good place to go to lunch.
Oh yeah, real good place.
Well, you know, we wouldn't be.
What we're looking at up here is the back of the case. We're going to have mounting bolts here and here, here and here, as well as here and here. We got to build a spacer that spaces these out equal to that. Well, we're going to do an update today on the Briggs & Stratton 23 627 cc engine with a 1.8 to 1 redrive, and where we're at in our testing and setting and seeing what the options are here. As you can see, there's been a lot of changes since we received the engine. We've taken all of the air cooling shrouds off and pretty much everything else that's not essential for operation as we're going to be using it. Now, I have a mount here that basically you unbolt the half VW and this bolts right back in the same spot. So it's not like you have to change anything there when we get ready to put this on the red one, or we're going to unbolt the 3V engine mount and bolt this one right back in. Now, we've learned several things as we've progressed here, and we have rubber mounts down here at the bottom, and these are a fairly soft rubber mount, but in all honesty, they could be very hard mounts, and I'm not sure they're really even needed. You don't need a lot of flex down there. Now, the thing that happens with flex down there, it helps out the vibration, but the engine likes to move forward. And what happens is you don't want your engine moving forward or backwards or moving around. You want it to stay stationary. So to make that happen, we've got a brace up here to a mount that comes off the top of the engine mount up here. That way it don't move forward and helps stiffen it side to side. So it's actually seems to be working quite well. We have a temporary throttle and choke assembly on it right now because we're not running it unless we're standing there. I've got two tiny tacks on it. The one TTO tiny tack hasn't worked very well, and I got a cheap knockoff from Amazon, and it seems to work quite well. And then I've also put a digital optical tack on it that reads the actual propeller RPM, and then compare that RPM to what I'm getting on the other tacks, and it's accurate pretty much of the time. I also have an optical handheld tack that I've got a reflector tape on the engine and the prop, so I can cross-check the tack and the optical tack on the RPM of the prop drive. So we're getting some pretty decent information there. Now, what we've done, we've got these J-bend exhaust pipes like used on the half VW. They're just a toilet plumbing J-bend. I'm getting a dBA reading of about 120, which is a little bit higher than the half VW. The half VW readings I was getting was closer to about 112, 114, something like that. And these are quite a bit noisier, so I'm going to put a little bit smaller exhaust on here Let's just see if that'll quieten it just a little bit. I don't have a intake screen yet, so I have tape over the top of the carburetor when it's off. I have not removed the fuel cutoff yet. I will be removing that before I try to go flying with it. We've got this nice little Redrive over here, and that Redrive does great, except it does not come with that bushing right there. And that bushing, they're actually readily available once you figure out what the heck you need. So I'll get that information in there as we progress, because I ended up, actually I got it through Amazon, and the price on that little bushing, depending on where you get it, can go anywhere from about $40 to $200, or even a little bit more. Anyway, we have a warp drive adjustable pitch prop, and that's kind of a critical element when you're doing some experimenting and testing, because you got to have something that's variable so you can tune it in. If all you're going to tune in is the engine, and you don't have any method of tuning in the prop, you got a problem. By being able to change the prop, I had the prop off of my Werner on here. It's a little bit bigger prop than this one, a little bit larger diameter. This is a 66 that we got on here. I'm sorry, a 62. The one on my Werner is a 67. And I was getting about the same thrust, using thrust as a comparison, at the actually a little bit more RPM. I had it set at 6 degrees. I've had this prop set at 6 degrees and at 7 degrees, and didn't vary the RPM all that much, maybe 150 RPM, but the thrust didn't move around very much. So one of the next things I got to do is get this on the front of an airplane and see what happens to the thrust once you actually get moving, because it could fall off or it could get better. So we'll just have to find out. Anyway, we're looking pretty good. I've got a setup here that's I got a fuel tank up on top. I've got my thrust scale. I've got my digital tack for the prop RPM, and then I've got 2 tiny tacks. And this one seems to be the most accurate. This seems to be accurate at times, but it's like you got to have something to double check it to see when it's working. And both of them have hour meters on them, a maximum RPM. This is my scale back here. Now, the way I have built this, the engine is mounted on a frame. Number one, for assembly and mounting and building the mount, I can adjust it so it's straight up and down. And then I can open it up, give it a little bit of measurement here, a little bit of distance. Shouldn't say measurement, but what happens is now it can move left to right, and it don't move much because I've got the scale set here, where the scale, as this thing pulls, it loads up the scale. And the scale is a type of a scale. It's a very accurate scale, and you can set it for tar. So you start the engine up, you turn the scale on, you start the engine up, you bring it to idle, and then you zero the scale. Now it's sitting there at idle at basically maybe 1 or 2 pounds of thrust. Then as you go up in the RPM, your thrust pounds goes up. And the maximum I've saw with either one of the props is about 181 pounds of thrust, which is not bad at all. It'll be interesting to see how that compares once I actually get it on the airplane and try the thrust again from the airplane. And then the other and the final proof of the pudding will be when we actually can taxi down the runway and see what it does, see how fast it accelerates, and see what it does once it gets in the air. Anyway, that's what we've got going on here. one of the things that happens, you got to have battery to start this thing, but once it's started, you can disconnect the battery and it continues to run. With the battery connected, it'll charge, which is kind of neat that it'll charge your battery back up. And don't have any fuel consumption figures, not even concerned about that at this point in time. I've got about 3 hours total of run time on it at this point in time. No real long runs, but lots of short runs. So anyway, we'll crank it up here in a little bit and see if we can get some noise and some run time on GoPro here. Okay.